You said you were bombed. What exactly happened?
I was driving my car, and I was driving down the street, and I was following somebody. At a certain point, I think she was getting ready to make a turn, and I was trying to follow her and realized I wasn't going right, and I quickly hit the brake. And at the time when I hit the brake, there was a very huge explosion, and I felt it rip through me.
What happened next that you can recall?
The next thing I remember, the car was stopped, and there were people around, and I was in incredible pain that I had never felt before. I knew my back was broken. My legs both were immobile at the time. I knew that my body was ruined. I knew that I was paralyzed. I felt that I was dying.
The driver was identified as 40-year-old Judi Bari, also of Ukiah. Both victims are members of the environmental group Earth First. Both were taken to nearby Highland hospitals. The passenger was taken out first.
I heard a crack, and then my whole head started to ring. Then I heard somebody scream out, "It's a bomb." There was a bomb. And then it all made sense that someone had tried to kill us.
At the time of the bombing, what was your occupation?
I was organizing for Earth First Redwood Summer.
And what was Redwood Summer?
Redwood Summer was a campaign that we initiated in 1990 to bring in students and others from around the country to participate in a summer-long exercise of demonstrations, nonviolent civil disobedience.
And where were they planned to take place?
Various places, Mendocino County and Humboldt County would be the main ones. The three timber companies that own most of the redwoods were the primary targets, Louisiana Pacific.
I think that what we've seen is these corporations have come in here and literally destroyed the ecosystem. Mendocino County is absolutely desperate. You all supervisors flew over Mendocino County timberlands recently, and I think that you will agree that we're really at a crisis stage.
Georgia Pacific and Maxam Pacific Lumber.
There's been so many death threats. People did go through the original great fear, and Judi, when I first met her, was just coming down from that period of freaking out from the first couple of death threats. Daryl waited a week, but she got through hers, and he freaked out.
And if you think I'm exaggerating, this was pinned to my office door. You all may see this also. This is a photograph of me Xeroxed from a newspaper with a rifle scope over my head.
Had you seen that photograph prior to seeing it in that form with the circle drawn over it and the cross?
Yes.
When did the article appear?
On April 3rd, 1990. It was about a Board of Supervisors meeting at which Earth First and currently employed loggers and mill workers appeared together to denounce the timber companies.
What's happening is that Louisiana Pacific owns 40 to 50,000 acres in the Cumberland area, and it's being overcut.
And asked for the county to use their power of eminent domain to seize the timber companies' properties so that we could assure sustained jobs and trees.
Had there been an incident in which you were hit by a truck?
Yes. I was traveling to a well-publicized demonstration as part of National Trees Week, and I had my children in my car and several of my friends, and we were rear-ended by a log truck that we had blockaded the very day before, driven by the same truck, the same driver.
Everybody's pretty badly cut and bruised. Daryl is not in the greatest of shape. They hit him attached to one of those wooden boards. They were going through Philo on their way here, and a logging truck didn't slow down coming into town, hit him from behind, propelled them into another car.
There was no squealing of brakes, there was no warning whatsoever, just simply a violent impact from the truck hitting my car. And I can only call it attempted murder.
Fortunately, no one was on that porch. They would have gotten killed for sure.
And they refused to investigate it as anything but a traffic accident. And I think that what was happening was a real pattern of non-enforcement of law regarding Earth Firsters. And what this did was it gave a green light to anybody who would attack us.
What's the next thing you remember after being taken out of the car?
I remember being placed on a gurney, which again was another incredible pain. I remember being put in an ambulance. I remember going to the hospital in the ambulance. I remember repeating that my back was broken. I remember a nurse hugging me and telling me that they were going to put me unconscious, and I remember begging them to let me die, and that's the last thing I remember before I lost consciousness.
And what's the next thing that you remember that happened when you woke up?
I remember waking up and finding myself completely immobile and my leg up in a traction device. And I remember that there were 2 uniformed police standing next to me as soon as I opened my eyes.
Did the 2 uniformed officers speak to you?
Yes. They told me that I was under arrest.
Formal charges were filed today against the 2 Earth First activists injured in yesterday's bombing in Oakland.
Sources have told us police believe the bomb was being carried in a guitar case that belonged to Judi Bari.
You know, their investigation, their whole thing was based on lies from day one. Their initial arrest of me and Daryl was based on a sworn affidavit from that sergeant, etc., that said the bomb was in the back seat, therefore they should have seen it, therefore they knew they were carrying it, and they're guilty of transporting explosives. When in fact, the bomb was under the seat. I know it was under the seat. I felt that thing blow up. I know exactly where it was.
They could show by my injuries that the bomb was under the car seat and not in the back seat. By this time, I was fully aware of those details.
Bari's injuries indicate that the bomb was placed directly underneath her, according to the surgeon who treated her at Highland Hospital, Dr. Peter Slaybaugh.
Daryl and Judi are strictly committed to nonviolence. Their whole scene is to remain nonviolent and to show that we're for life continuing on the planet.
Did you know at that time that the FBI was involved in the case?
Absolutely. But even more, I learned that Richard Held was in charge of the San Francisco FBI. I didn't know who he was before that. And I knew that he was making statements in the newspapers about the case.
We have to go where the evidence goes. As an investigative agency, we collect whatever evidence is available and take it to the U.S. Attorney's Office to determine if there's a basis for prosecution.
Did you learn some alleged facts about Richard Held that you connected to the status of your own case?
Yes. I was brought articles detailing Richard Held's career in the FBI, and I learned that he was a COINTELPRO operative under J. Edgar Hoover.
The decline in Hoover's reputation began soon after his death in 1972, as the nation began to learn the full extent of his abuse of power, his persecution of Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders, of feminists and the early environmentalists.
J. Edgar Hoover described it as a way of they targeting domestic radical groups that they think are a threat to the U.S. government. So these are his words: to expose, misdirect, isolate, and neutralize political groups that he didn't like. And that's really what's been done to Earth First.
They used the term neutralize, but no one ever defined what neutralize meant. You know, someone might think, well, gee, why don't I just have one of my informants in another organization go out and shoot this guy and, you know, have him assassinated. That'll neutralize him for sure.
And those things are what made me sure that despite my innocence, I could still spend my life in prison because I felt that this man had a track record.
Special Agent Richard Held is the man behind the show. He helped frame Leonard Peltier and jailed Geronimo. He falsified the evidence, life sentences, no bail. It's time to get him freed and let's put Richard Held in jail. The FBI stole my fiddle. 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 Richard Held stole my fiddle. And I want my fiddle back.
You started this lawsuit, correct?
No. Daryl started this lawsuit. I was still too disabled to deal with lawsuits.
And did you want it to start?
Absolutely.
What was it you hoped to achieve by pursuing the lawsuit?
Justice.
In what form?
Justice and vindication. The other purpose was to try to create some kind of restraint on the FBI so that they couldn't continue to do this to political activists.
We've charged them with false arrest, illegal search and seizure, unequal protection of the law, and conspiracy to violate our First Amendment rights by discrediting us as terrorists.
And have there been things that you've learned in the course of the lawsuit that have had an effect on you that added on to the impact of the original arrest and the accusations?
The discovery that the FBI had held a bomb school in Eureka, California 1 month before I was bombed, during which they blew up cars with pipe bombs. In discovery, when Hansen said that there had been this bomb school and that Frank Doyle had been his instructor, and that what they had done practically recreated the same crime scene the way I heard it, as soon as we walked out of that deposition, I was terrified. I had panic attacks over it. I was terrified by it.
Well, this is it. This is it. Go to it. This is the final exam right here.
Because it raised a question about FBI prior knowledge, and it was something deeper than I thought that this was. And I began to question, was there more involvement than I could see? And I wondered whether, if I found that out, was I in danger?
Is there another thing that you learned that had a similar type of impact on you in the course of the lawsuit?
When I first saw the crime scene photos, and it was so obvious that the bomb was not only under the seat, but that it was unambiguous.
I guess they were busy in Waco or something and they weren't paying attention, but for some reason they released to us these incredible photos that absolutely, without a doubt, show that the FBI and the Oakland police lied and knew they were lying. This is the picture right after they've taken me out of the cars. The front seat is blown right through, the back seat is completely intact. Any idiot would have known that the bomb was under the front seat and meant to kill.
Well, my observation of these photos was that the evidence was unambiguous, and so the arrest, based on the claim that they thought that the bomb was in the back seat, must have been deliberate rather than a mistake. And that became clearer in my mind. That's how I felt about it when I saw those photos. And just looking at those photos, looking at myself being pulled out of the car and stuff, I cried the first time I saw them. It took a while to be able to just be hardened to them.
And the police report also has some interesting information in them. The first cop on the scene was Oakland Police Department Officer Grebe. And his first statements, before anybody else gets there, he says, "I am now photographing the car. I'm photographing the damage under the driver's seat." 20 minutes after the bomb went off, Sergeant Sitterud of the Oakland Police Department arrived. He's labeled us as terrorists, and what he says in the warrant is, "I viewed the white Subaru along with an agent of the FBI, Frank Doyle. Frank Doyle told me that the bomb was in the backseat floorboard." So as soon as that statement is made, all of a sudden the bomb starts changing position in the reports. Frank Doyle has made the most blatant lie. He says right in there, "I base my statement on my observation of a large hole in the backseat floorboard." Well, there's the large hole, and it ain't in the backseat floorboard.
Well, this is it. This is it. Go to it. This is the final exam right here.